Hello and good evening. Welcome to a fresh edition of Moneycontrol Masterclass on an issue that should matter to all of us. We are addressing the increasing instances of frequent data breaches that we've seen in the last 6 months, from Dunzo to BigBasket to Upstocks to Domino's to Air India. Why is this happening at such frequent intervals? How can you and I protect our data? To discuss all this and more, we have a very special panel of guests. We have Justice B.N. Sri Krishna, retired judge of the Supreme Court, one of India's leading arbitrators. He also headed the panel that came up with India's data protection bill, personal data protection bill, which is unfortunately still hanging fire. It's not a law yet. We have Arvind Gupta, the co-founder of Digital India Foundation, a policy think tank, someone who's worked with the government very closely. We also have Saket Modi, the co-founder and CEO of Safe Security, a cybersecurity firm. Saket, thank you for joining us all the way from the US. Must be very early morning for you. And we have Rajshekhar Rajaharya, an internet security researcher who's been exposing all these breaches in the last few months. So thank you all very much for joining us. For viewers tuning in, we are live with all four of them. So if you have questions related to security, how to stay safe, if you want tips and tricks, please keep sending them in. We will get your questions answered. Rajshekhar, let me start with you because, I often see your posts exposing some of these breaches. Then the company is silent, and then a day later they say, okay, something has happened, we are doing an audit. Can you tell us why it has increased so much in the last 6 months? Any reasons why, and how are you able to uncover these breaches? Why is the company not able to find?
I think in last few months during COVID, many companies and their employees are working from home, and I think there is no proper security. And in office they are using firewall, but at home there are no firewall and some other security issue measure they are accepting and working. So and previously, loads company was using around 30 to 60 days password changing policy, but now not every company is changing their password continuously. So I think these data breaches are increasing, and I think loads companies are also not checking their server logs regularly. So this is the major reason behind these data breaches.
Right. Saket and Arvind, if you can weigh in on why this is happening at frequent intervals, what patterns have you observed? Arvind, I remember you were one of the first to say, I could find all my details as a user of Domino's, from your name to numbers to addresses. So if both of you can weigh in on what exactly is happening.
Let me take the lead. I think what my friend just before me said is probably true. Over the last 14 to 15 months, unfortunately, while the world has been fighting a pandemic, all sorts of cyber crooks and cyber frauds and cyber attackers have taken new shapes and forms. India, as it is, has some friendly neighbors, and they keep attacking our infrastructure. We've seen a lot of increase in our infrastructure being attacked. Thankfully, that has been protected well, touch wood, and but we are seeing huge. So the breaches are a percentage of the attempts, and what we are seeing is the number of breaches have gone up, not like 1x, 2x, probably about 10 to 20x. Attempts to breach have gone up by 10 to 20x, and there are all sorts. As the researcher just said, if I'm using a phone at home and my phone gets compromised, and that's the same phone that I've been using to connect with my office, let's say, for some things, I have a higher likelihood of breaching or putting some malware into my office systems or my corporate systems. Now, and that's a trend that, as I said, we've observed over 15 months. But the real issue is that a lot of these breaches, I pointed it out because I saw my data being sent to me by somebody like the researcher, and said, "See, Arvind, your data is out there," and it turned out to be true. The real issue out there is that are these only technical breaches, or are these people breaches, or are these process breaches? a lot of companies were not prepared to work from home, and they implemented, their technology may be correct, but their processes and people probably have also faltered many places. So the I always have said it's a combination of the three things that protect the system: the technology, the processes, and the people. Sometimes it's not just the tech. So that's the brief opening comment I do want to make over here.
Right. Sakib, do you want to weigh in on that? Are these people breaches, technology breaches, process breaches? Have companies perhaps been caught unawares? They haven't invested enough in security.
Sure, Chandra. Firstly, thank you for having me on your show. It's truly an honor, and you've done this in the past, so it's so nice to be back with you. Uh, let's understand a couple of things. Let's just take one step back and understand that as security professionals, including myself, it's easy to look at it and say, hey, you know what, you need to invest more, and there needs to be more focus on cybersecurity, et cetera, et cetera. But for a second, if you step back and see, I love this line that the CEO of PayPal said in one of his earnings calls two quarters back. He said, look, COVID took us from Flintstones to Jetsons in 6 months, right? And the reason why he says that, and that is so true, is today, in true sense, technology has become the heart of how any business runs, irrespective of the industry and even, frankly, the size, because even the smaller companies these days cannot survive if they are not a technology company. And when you put technology in the heart of everything that you're doing, you have to expand the digital footprint that you've got, whether it's your applications, infrastructure, subscribing to SaaS solutions, creating your own applications depending on the size of the company that you are, et cetera, et cetera. And if you marry all of that together and understand that the pressure from the business to release new software, to release new applications to the market, not because it's cool, it's a cool thing to do, but it's a survival issue. Today, I mean, if pizza companies are not coming out with their apps to deliver pizza, that part of the market is being taken up by the Zomatos or the Swiggies of the world, and therefore they have to compete and be, for survival to be there. And therefore, when you look at such a huge amount of pressure on business to release quickly, to expand the digital footprint, it is not an easy job to actually go ahead and protect every aspect of that, especially because you're doing it for the first time as an organization at this scale that I'm talking about, irrespective of whichever company you would look at it. So therefore, I would say that, I'm completely, I echo what Arvind was saying right before me, and that this is a people process technology problem, and you need to tackle it from all sides, which is holistic. But at the same time, it's not an easy problem to solve. And there definitely will be this is the reason cybersecurity is a great place to be, because it will be an industry of the future with everything that's going on. So that's just my quick overview, Chandra, about the current situation.
I'm sure your business will have a lot of takers, Saket, considering what we are seeing. But a big welcome to all viewers who are just tuning in. And we have our panelists live. So if you have questions, keep sending them in. Justice Sri Krishna, coming to you. You, of course, headed a panel, a committee that came up with a personal data protection bill. And I remember when I spoke to you a few days ago, you said that hackers are having a field day in India because there is no law to protect anyone. So, are there provisions currently, in the Consumer Protection Bill or the IT Act that people can use, or are these futile? Are there precedents in doing this, or do we have to wait for the Personal Data Protection Bill to become law?
Thank you, Chandra, for giving me this opportunity of interacting with all these young technical brains. Now, the point is, the legal system can solve every problem that is available in the country. Now, it's not necessary to have a separate law for dealing with it. You can as well go and file a suit and wait in the queue for the next 25 years. That is why you require different types of laws and different regulators, so that each is a separate issue that can be dealt with separately. Now, one of the advantages of, in fact, if you remember, when the Aadhaar matter was being argued before the Supreme Court asked a very material question and said, but where is the law that protects privacy in this country? And then immediately, post-haste, the government formed the committee and called me up and said, will you be a chairman? And everything happened thereafter. And of course, after 2018, the report was given and the draft bill was given, everything is in the freezer. Now the question is, what is it that can be done? The whole idea was that personal data protection has to be evolved as a concept. Nobody had what this idea was. IT had some rules, which the rules of the IT are as antediluvian as the T model or something like 4T model. Now, how do you enforce it? What is it, the concept of personal protection? In fact, I would say that in the country, even I heard it for the first time. I said, what is all this data protection about? Nobody knows what this data protection is about. And it took me some time before I could focus my attention on what this concept was, how the GDPR dealt with it, how the South African country laws dealt with it, how Estonia dealt with it and all that. Now the law has built in structurally several things. One is it has generated and evolved the concept of data protection. Add to it the Supreme Court's declaration that it is a fundamental right. Now, what is a fundamental right? Fundamental right is like the fundamental right to live. It springs from my right to live. Now, once I say it is right to live, it is sacrosanct. Nobody can touch it. Neither a private person nor a state authority can touch it unless a definite methodology is followed. Now, where is all that today? Nothing. So it is like saying that I have concentrated a lot of money, kept it under my pillow, cash in cash, and the robbers are making an attempt daily to steal it from me. Of course, they will steal it from you. Because what is the method that you offer? See, that is why the more data, today what has happened, and Sakesh is right, Arvind is right, there is a lot of concentration of data on account of the change in the business structure. Now, it is happening that all your eggs are putting in one basket, and somebody is having a field day in stealing your eggs from the basket. That is exactly what has happened. Therefore, now the pressure more is on the individuals, whether they are individuals or whether they are individual companies, on how to protect it, how to prevent cyber attack. Cyber attacks have happened earlier also. It is not that it has not happened. And they have continued to happen hereafter also. But the question is, today we are in a situation where everything is online, everything is data concentrated. And therefore, it is necessary to have some kind of a legal fortress built. Why? Because the consumer has no method of resolution of his problem, no method of recourse to it. That is where the law is necessary. If today it happens, I can't complain. To whom do I complain? The IT ministry will say, okay, we have done the IC rules, you take care of it. Who is going to take care of it? Now, I can go to the court, but then you know how the court system works. Now, take for example, capital markets. How did the capital market suddenly become very good? Because you have a regulator who is constantly looking after things. And he is being monitored by a particular appellate tribunal, the SCB, the appellate, SAT and all that.
SAT.
Now you have the Reserve Bank constantly monitoring all payment systems and financial transactions through banks and NBFCs. You have the IRDAI constantly monitoring all insurance companies. Now, when it comes to data, it is like an orphan. Who is monitoring it? Nothing. The IT ministry, they have no ghost of an idea of what is a data and how it should be protected. Well, this is the situation we are faced with. Until the particular law is put in place, people will have a field day. Of course, yes, technology and people who want to break technology, they always have this race. So one has to see who will ultimately win.
Right.
Hopefully, not the crooks.
Right. Arvind, do you want to comment on that? Justice Shri Krishna saying, the IT ministry has no ghost of an idea on data. Is it the least of their priorities at this point, despite so many breaches? I mean, we keep talking about digital India, but we also need a digitally safe India, and that doesn't seem to be a priority. Though there is a cert, I think Rajshekhar can talk about that. But what is your sense, Arvind? Arvind, can you hear me? Okay, Rajshekhar, maybe Saket, maybe you can comment on that.
Sure, I can just hop in. Maybe Arvind's having some audio issue. So just to add to what Shri Krishna sir was saying, I still remember this amazing saying. It says, what is the law? And there's a person who said that, law is something that keeps honest people honest. So, in other words, the problem is that when you talk about data, and I know we've heard this so many times, starting from our own Mukesh Ambani till so many people saying, "Hey, data is the new oil," and blah blah blah. And data is important. We all understand that. And given India has now what 600 million smartphones, you're producing probably anywhere between tens to hundreds of megabytes of data on a daily basis, where it's your own telemetry, pictures, audio, video, etc., etc. And all of them, by the way, the moment you create it on your phone, that's all tagged to your own self. It's personally identifiable with the stamps and the geotagging and so many of those things which are possible. And if you look at it, Chandra, the problem is that today there is no ways by which companies which are going to be using that data or which are already using that data to make any degree of business case or profits or revenue, the accountability or the ownership of saying, look, I am taking your data, but this is how secure I promise to keep that data, and these are the exact places where I will be using your data. I mean, none of that has existed, and it's a global problem. It's not just India. I think, yes, I obviously, having read through what Shri Krishna sir had produced with his committee, I think it's one of the most phenomenal, and it's one of the most, I would say, forward-looking, potential law, which we all hope that comes someday. But at the same time, I mean, a country like India with Digital India in the center, it's like you don't have your parents while the child is being spoken about, but the parent, which needs to be something that regulates the child to make sure it's nurtured and grows up in the most in the best possible way, that's just not there. So that's just my view about where things are on the lines of the law on data. Chandra, back to you.
Yeah, it's like a Wild West ride without parental controls, as you put it. Let me come to Rajshekar. Rajshekar, is there a pattern that you have observed? Because you've been flagging a series of breaches in the last 6 months. So, is there a pattern? Is there a common vulnerability that perhaps the hackers are exploiting? Because from what I can see, all these are consumer facing apps, apps that we use very frequently. So any particular strand that you've been able to perhaps uncover, based on what you've seen so far?
Chandra, in last 6 months, when I was talking with some hackers and when I was seeing there was a lot of breaches, every company was using Amazon AWS servers, and I think around 80% AWS server got hacked because of I don't know. I think they are using they are checking their server logs or not. Why everyone is targeting Amazon AWS servers? And when I was checking a company's logs, then I think they were talking on a support ticket that their data was compromised. But still, they are not focusing on that. And my concern is when a data breach happens, not a single company aware or alert their users, and because of these, our rural community are getting targeted. हमारे जो गांव के लोग हैं जो recently ही ये during COVID जो लोग online आए हैं and they started using Paytm and some other apps and started paying online, so people are getting cheated.
Right, interesting. What is the mechanism, Rajshekar? जब आपको पता चलता है कि कुछ breach हुआ है या hack हुआ है, do you inform mateys, computer emergency response team? Do they get back? Arvind, I'm just going to come to you.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. In Jan, when I started reporting to Certain, then they just reply that we have noted your complaint and nothing else. उसके बाद कुछ भी नहीं होता. उसके बाद में अगर आप कंपनी को reach out करते हैं कि there is a breach in your server, then they started denying it. And later, if you will send the second email to them, then they will say that we will take legal action against you.
So you get threatened by the companies, basically.
Yeah, sometimes, but not a single company take any action against me till now. But they started threatening us for this. बट हाँ काफी टाइम ये होता है कि बिकॉज जितनी भी कंपनीज हैं, हर कंपनीज में आपका खुद का भी अकाउंट होता है, तो सो यू कैन से दैट कि आई एम ऑलरेडी योर यूजर एंड आई कैन सू यू, मैं आप पे केस कर सकता हूँ इससे पहले कि आप मुझ पे केस करें, बिकॉज मैं भी आपका एक रजिस्टर्ड यूजर हूँ.
Right. Arvind, you wanted to come in, and then I'll go to Justice Shri. Okay, Justice Shri Krishna, go on.
I want to add something to this.
Okay.
The only way in which the data has been really subject to this kind of scrutiny is by the Reserve Bank. Now, first of all, the Reserve Bank shot the gun, and although there is no law in place, they have already made it, issued a rule that all financial transactions are to be localized in India, number one. Apart from that, with regard to every banking transaction, the Reserve Bank has issued a strong circular saying that within 7 days, you have to identify, report to me, make an audit, and come back to me and tell me why it has happened. Now, if there is a general law, it will apply across the board, not necessarily to banks and financial transactions. Now, this is what is missing right now.
Arvind?
Well, there is no doubt what Justice Sri Krishna says. The country is missing the personal data protection law, and I think it's been it's unfortunate that it is sitting because of COVID. I would attribute that we don't have the law yet, but hopefully it will see the light of the day very soon. But I want to make 2 or 3 points which are very critical because again, my friend who's a researcher has said a few things which I want to separate them out, and the 3 basic points I want to make. Number one is that data breaches are different than cyber fraud. Cyber fraud, somebody sends you a link, a clickbait, and promising you the Nigerian classic, the 419 scams or anything else. I think, and those have been on 11x, 12x rise. So nobody's saying they are not. A lot of times, users are at that on the wrong side of it. There is, and that's true that a lot of digital migrants, people who have really come on the digital bandwagon for the first time, get trapped. Senior citizens get trapped, and that's this is across the board. The second point I want to make, you saw what they did with COVID tests, then now with vaccinations. All this, there is a lot of opportunity that arises because of anxiety of people, and they send these messages, SMSs, click on this link to get a priority slot, and people get trapped in that. The second point I want to make is the real data breaches that companies serve or the governments supposedly, and that's a point. A sub point I want to make, Chandra, is that if the amount of data breaches that have happened in any of these corporates, if the data was floating even as a screenshot, and this was applicable to the government, the hoo-ha that the media, the activists would have made so far would have been so high that it would be frontline news, the front page news everywhere. I've seen people taking screenshots of entitlements from different states and say Aadhaar data has been leaked, and that's the headlines. Touchwood again, fortunately, and security experts and security professionals probably have a sleepless night all the time. It has been well protected. Coming to corporates, when people like my friend, the researcher, actually approach them, nobody knows what the intent is, who these people, who sometimes the people are. And that's the core of, whether these are people are genuine researchers, white hat hackers, or actually looking for money. And we've seen time abound people taking money in this Bitcoin world for threats, and companies do get blackmailed, rightly or wrongly, and pay up. And that is their business model. And in this business model, what happens is companies are not sure who are they dealing with, and that's something I think, as Justice Sri Krishna says, we need to have a better process in that, in disclosures. Right. The RBI has a better disclosure norms. Companies don't, and I have not. Very frankly, Air India did a better job when they found out they had a data breach. I got an email from Air India, even though I've just used the Air India as a flight system, not really as a frequent flyer system. And but I've not got it from any other companies which you have named in breaches, saying that hey, we had a data breach or a potential data breach. So,
Rajshekar, would you agree that government has perhaps been more secure than the private companies, and as Arvind said, he's actually right. Air India put out a statement. I don't remember seeing these statements put out by other companies. And the other point on how companies react to cyber, internet security researchers when they reach out to them, that they don't know if these people are reaching out with good intent, with malafide intent.
Even I was also surprised that Air India alerted their users and they come in public that there is a data breach happened. So अगर Air India ने report नहीं किया होता तो I think शायद
तो
किसी
आप
को पता
रिपोर्ट
भी नहीं
करते?
लगता. नहीं, शायद किसी को पता भी नहीं लगता बिकॉज एयर इंडिया का जो ब्रीच था वो कभी ओपन आया ही नहीं था. एंड जो सीटा का ब्रीच था, क्योंकि सीटा वाज हैंडलिंग देयर डेटा, सीटा ने कभी भी इसको एयर इंडिया का नाम कभी भी मेंशन नहीं किया एंड सीटा ने मार्च के अंदर इसको डिस्क्लोज कर दिया. तो आई थिंक एयर इंडिया अगर पब्लिकली डिस्क्लोज नहीं करता देन शायद आई थिंक किसी को पता नहीं लगता कि एयर इंडिया का ब्रीच हुआ है. सो आई वाज आल्सो सरप्राइज कि कैसे एयर इंडिया ने पब्लिकली आके इनिशिएट किया और सारे यूजर्स को अवेयर किया. एंड अदर साइड आरबीआई का भी अगर हम देखें तो लास्ट फेब के अंदर मोबिक्विक का डेटा ब्रीच हुआ था एंड अभी तक उनका जो रिपोर्ट था फॉरेंसिक ऑडिट का वो आज तक पब्लिक के सामने नहीं है, किसी को नहीं पता कि क्या हुआ. एंड थर्ड थिंग, अगर हम कार्ड्स के अंदर देखते हैं तो जैन से अब तक अराउंड 30 करोड़ कार्ड्स के डेटा पब्लिक हो चुके हैं, वीजा, मास्टर कार्ड सबका. एंड अकॉर्डिंग टू पीसीआई स्टैंडर्ड they are only encrypting fast, like they are only storing fast 6 and last 4 digit. and so उसके बाद में जो डिजिट रिमेन बचते हैं वो 6 डिजिट बचते हैं. so कोई भी 6 डिजिट का जो कॉम्बिनेशन है वो इजीली डिक्रिप्ट कर सकता है. and many companies are using very bad encryption, like some companies are using SHA 256. so यहाँ पे जो केस है उसके अंदर क्या होता है कि आपको अराउंड 10 लाख डिजिट का कॉम्बिनेशन बनाना होता है, जो कोई भी सर्वर इजीली विद इन सेकेंड्स और विद इन मिनट्स बना के जो हैश है उसके साथ मैच करके आपका पूरा का पूरा कार्ड नंबर पब्लिक कर सकते हैं. सो आज तक इस पे कोई एक्शन नहीं हुआ. एंड थर्ड चीज कि अरविंद सर ने जो बोला कि लाइक डेटा ब्रीचेस का चीटिंग से कोई कनेक्शन नहीं होता है. हाँ, कुछ हद तक नहीं होता है, लेकिन जितना हम लोग डार्क वेब पे देखते हैं या फिर जो डिस्कशन फोरम है जहाँ पे डेटा सेल होता है, वहाँ पे इनके जो बायर्स हैं या तो इनके कंपनीज का कॉम्पिटिटर ही वो डेटा परचेज करता है. कॉम्पिटिटर के बाद में जब वो डेटा एकदम चीप प्राइस के अंदर मार्केट में अवेलेबल हो जाता है देन स्पैमर्स उसको परचेज करते हैं. ये स्पैमर्स वही हैं जो हमारी जामतारा की गैंग है. आजकल हमारे भरतपुर के अंदर एक नया गैंग स्टार्ट हो गया है. एंड ये लोग सोशल इंजीनियरिंग का यूज करके डेटा सेट्स, छोटे छोटे डेटा सेट्स बना के आप ही की इंफॉर्मेशन आप ही को बता के आपके साथ चीटिंग करते हैं. और जो हमारा टियर 1 टियर 2 सिटी है, ये लोग आज के दिन अवेयर हो चुके हैं ब्रिजेज से या फिर फ्रॉड और चीटिंग से. बट जो गांव के लोग हैं, जो रूरल population है हमारी, they are not aware about these cheating and all. So I think companies को इसलिए अलर्ट करना चाहिए क्योंकि हमारी आधी से ज्यादा पॉपुलेशन डेटा ब्रीचेस, डेटा सेट, सोशल इंजीनियरिंग, चीटिंग, पैसा कैसे विड्रॉ होता है, इन सब चीजों से वो अवेयर ही नहीं है. उन लोगों ने बेचारा कोविड के टाइम पे अभी ऑनलाइन पेमेंट करना स्टार्ट किया है. स्टार्टिंग में उन्होंने उसको अवॉइड किया था कि हम लोग ऑनलाइन पेमेंट नहीं करेंगे, वो कैश पे भरोसा करते थे. बट कोविड के टाइम पे उन लोगों की मजबूरी हो गई ऑनलाइन पेमेंट करना.
राइट.
यहाँ पे अगर डोमिनोज का भी हम देखें तो डोमिनोज ने, हाँ ठीक है, काफी टाइम बाद में डोमिनोज स्टार्टेड अलर्टिंग इट्स यूजर्स, बट डोमिनोज ने अपने ईमेल में भी कहीं ये मेंशन नहीं किया कि डेटा ब्रीच के अंदर क्या क्या डेटा सेट्स थे, क्या क्या ब्रीच हुआ है.
करेक्ट. Saket, when you advise companies, on security audits or what they should do, I mean, are they okay with proactively telling customers about breaches? Is that, something that you would advise companies, as Rajshekar here suggested? Because, immediately they are on the defensive, they go into radio silence, then a few days later they come back and say, okay, we are doing some forensic audit, but no one really knows what happens after that.
Sure. A couple of points there, Chandra. Firstly, why does Air India not have a problem in disclosing the breach? Because nobody gets fired when Air India discloses the breach. When a private company, says that or discloses a breach, there are repercussions. And the repercussions are not just about the jobs of the security leader, which, by the way, in the industry are now on an average for 3 years. It's probably one of the shortest span average job of a a chief security or a chief information security officer than almost any other kind of profession which is out there on an average for Fortune 2000 companies. But coming back to your point about how open are companies to disclose hacks, so let's understand a basic question, right? I mean, my organization, right? We secure more than almost 300 organizations around the world, right? See, hacks or breaches are not something which come once in a year. I'll give you a small example without naming. This is a very large bank in the Middle East. Last week, we showed them how to transfer money from any account to any account. I'll give you another example of one of the top flight companies, aviation companies in the world, where last month we showed them live stats of the amount of fuel on every flight, the itinerary with the names of the customers live right now on every flight which is flying. I'll give you an example of an oil and gas company where we showed them, this was a couple of months back, how can you stop one of their plants and make things happen. The reason I'm giving you these examples is that, see, it is not something which is like, oh, it happens once in a year or now a hack has happened. If you will talk to a chief security officer, it reminds me of a story, right? If you go to a person who manages fires in a forest, you would imagine, like if you ask them, how do you manage all the fire? The answer will be, no, I don't need to manage all the fire. All I need to manage is the biggest fire and make sure that is being, addressed, because fires will always be there given the complexity and the size of, the infrastructure which is out there. So what even Raj was saying in the past, right? He was speaking about AWS, for example. Now, AWS is not at fault there. Remember, AWS gives you the infrastructure. Now it's on you to use it in the right way, because you need to manage it. You need to, optimize it for security, because you own the settings, whether it's infrastructure as a service or a platform as a service that you're using it for, you need to optimize it. And that is where it becomes a problem. And, the exponential rise of digital is the problem. The other problem, Chandra, to what you were saying, is there is a very siloed view of looking at cybersecurity. Now, like if I take care of everything on the cloud, but guess what? Cloud is hosting an application. That is a different view. There's a different dashboard. Now, the people who are managing the security of the cloud is securing the people side of it, which is a different view. The firewall or the WAF which I'm using there is a different view. And it's an extremely siloed and a fragmented view of cybersecurity today in most organizations. So the future is where you go from a siloed view to a holistic view in a dynamic way, which can give you an objective view of how cybersecurity needs to be looked at. So yeah, that's my views of how companies need to look at security, Chandra, in the near future.
Right. Justice Shri Krishna, suppose we have a personal data protection law in place. What can people do if their details have been compromised? Can they file a complaint with the DPA, the Data Protection Authority? What happens after that? If you can give us that scenario, that, if we have a law, what action can we expect?
See, that is why the data protection law will have an obligation on every person who stores data to maintain it in good shape, to ensure that there is no breach, and also to promptly inform the Data Protection Authority within 72 hours or 48 hours, whatever is that limit that is prescribed. Now, once you tell him, then that man will get into action and say, all right, I'll give you 7 days to investigate and tell me why it has happened, plug the holes. And there is constant dialogue between the Data Protection Authority and the person, the data fiduciary. Now, today there is no law. That is the problem. You see, let me give you a concrete example which everybody understands. Right from the biblical times, we were advised in Bible and said, don't covet your neighbor's wealth. I'm restricting the argument to wealth only. So, but every human beings have always coveted somebody's wealth. So there is always chores, there is always dakus, dacoits, and robbers and crooks always in the world. Now, why is it that you need a criminal law? To ensure that promptly action is taken against them, to ensure that, as rightly said by Saket, to ensure that honest people remain honest and dishonest people even if you cannot turn them honest, at least catch them and give them appropriate punishment. This is exactly the purpose of a law. Now, if this law is there, anywhere, look at how it works. There is a data protection authority, and then the job of the data protection authority is to constantly have a dialogue with various sectors of the industry, various sectors of the business, and ensure what are the best practices for the purpose of protection of data. Now, somebody mentioned here and said, why is it that there is difficulty that when I give my data to somebody, do I know that that person has the same, what they call the adequacy test, that he has the same adequate precaution for maintaining my data? If he is not, I will not have a contract with him, or even if I have a contract with him, the contract will say, I will give it to you on this, otherwise you indemnify by damages. Now, all this is built into the law. Now, if as a consumer I am suffered, so the breach can happen for two reasons. Breach can be on account of, as they rightly pointed out, some process breach or personal breach or on account of technology breakdown. Now, every time it happens, then I as a consumer must have a recourse to something. Now, that recourse is available under the Data Protection Act. And in fact, MNCs were begging me and saying, don't make it a 5% global turnover as the punishment for this. Now, this is how it should act in terrorism. Today, nobody bothers. What does it matter to you? I mean, if it just project it into the financial world and see. If the banks were to say, "Arey, idhar se 1,000 rupiya gaye, to kya fark padta hai, bhai?" And as it is, you are protected up to 2 lakh rupees. Now, what happens to larger amounts? Now, why is it that the banks have to protect it all the time? Because they are holding on to somebody's assets. Similarly, the person to whom you give your money has to hold on to it. The person to whom you give your car for repairs has to ensure that the car is not damaged in the process. Similarly, if I give my data to somebody to process it, it is his responsibility to ensure that the data is not breached, either because of carelessness or because of technical non-feasibility. Now, if you cannot ensure it, he is answerable. He is answerable in damages to me, and that is the crux of the law. Now, if this fear of God is there in everybody who takes my data, then they'll be more careful, they'll be more selective, and say, will I be able to handle it? And will I be able to handle it without a proper indemnity insurance on my back? That is the advantage.
Right. Now, as we come to the last 20 minutes, to help our viewers, we're getting a lot of questions on the recent rules. How can people stay safe? So if each one of you can give us a few tips for individuals to stay safe till there is a law to protect us. So maybe I can start with Arvind, and then, Saket and Rajshekhar, you all can take a stab at it. Arvind?
Yeah, I think that's
because I think the onus is on individuals now till we have a legal framework. So, if you can tell us.
The onus should always be first with individuals. We should first of all value our data. I think that's a very important thing. If we stop valuing our data, we stop understanding that all these applications that are sitting on our phone are nothing but data consumers. I've given this example many times in the past, and let me say that again for the purpose of this meeting. Whenever the product is free, you are the product. You have a product, let's say a torch application on your phone. Only job torch should be doing is to switch on the flashlight and switch it off. But if you go and see what kind of data it is reading all your contacts, your call records, your SMSs. That's where we don't value what permissions we're giving. So there's number one, I think we need to value our own data. We need to really relook at what apps do we have on the phone. So certain operating systems protect us better than the others. I'm not comparing one versus the other, but we need to. That's number one. Point number two is clickbaits. I am very, very skeptical of clicking on anything that I receive on an SMS, on an email, on a WhatsApp that is unknown. And even if it is known, I try to be very, very careful. And thirdly, when it comes to financial matters, I try to use more safer routes to pay money, things like having a small bank account, balance account for online banking and online payments, rather than a bigger exposure account. So kind of a sub account or a virtual account a payments bank account that I use to make all my payments rather than the main bank accounts. And the last point is, and again, this is for the technically advanced. I use a small VPN on my phone that protects both incoming and outgoing malware on my phone. So at least my personal things are protected. I back up on a secure server, and use two-factor authentication for whatever apps you are able to use two-factor authentication on. As many apps as possible, use two-factor authentication. Those are some of the tips. I could go on and on, but I think we have better and more smarter people than me who could tell you. This is what I do personally.
That's quite a lot, Arvind. I actually have to take notes of what all you have done and do the same. Saket?
Thanks, Chandra. The problem with this answer is, as Arvind very rightly said, we can really go on and on. And Chandra, you know me, and I probably do a session like this on average thrice in a week. So one of the things that I and my team thought that, look, this question comes up everywhere. Saket, we're scared after your session. What do we do about our own security? Now, every single thing that Arvind said needs to be done. Very, very important. But there is a much longer list. So what we said that, look, why don't we create a zero permission app? Zero permission is the important word, because as Arvind said, that there's so many apps just sucking in all the information of yours, data of yours, and then using it for whatever reasons. Zero permission app. We put it on the App Store and the Play Store, both on iOS and Android. You can go and download it. It's called SafeMe, SAFEME. It's free of cost, and it's zero ads and zero permission. So it, in true sense, doesn't take any of your data. You just log in using your email. That's it. Doesn't even ask your name. And it actually gives you hundreds of 3-minute courses: how to secure my Paytm, how to secure Bheem, how to secure my Facebook, Instagram, how to secure my Zoom calls, etc., etc. 3-minute videos with a quiz. So you can just go there, see what that is. The app even scans your phone and shows you your leaked passwords on the deep and dark web. So I would recommend people to just go and download that app, free of cost, and easy for everybody to be able to see. And the videos are in English and in Hindi. So you can just download it, what it looks like, and yeah, leave a comment if you have any feedback there. Chandra.
Right. Thanks for that, Saket. Rajshekar? We can't hear you. I think you're on mute. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, I agree with Saket. Like companies, there is no fault of AWS servers, but companies are not checking their AWS server logs regularly. Like some hacker was telling that he was accessing some company data from March, but he downloaded the data in April. Like he is downloading their data after 1 month. So there is completely companies fault there because they are not checking their logs regularly. And the second चीज like हमारा जितना भी डेटा है आई थिंक सारा का सारा पब्लिक हो चुका है, बट हमें जो कंसर्न है दैट इज और फाइनेंशियल डेटा. जितने भी हमारे इंडिया में पेमेंट गेटवे हैं, उन पेमेंट गेटवे के जो वेंडर्स हैं या उनको जो यूज कर रहे हैं, कुछ कंपनीज हैं जो कि जब पेमेंट गेटवे के साथ में व्हेन दे आर शेयरिंग डेटा, देन दे आर शेयरिंग डेटा इन एनक्रिप्शन मोड, बट 90% कंपनीज आर सेंडिंग ईमेल एंड मोबाइल नंबर एंड सब ऑल अदर डिटेल्स आर इन प्लेन टेक्स्ट विद देम. सो अगर आपको डेटा सिक्योर करना है तो प्लेन टेक्स्ट में भी पेमेंट गेटवे के साथ डेटा ही शेयर क्यों ना एनक्रिप्शन मोड में शेयर करना, जो कि कुछ कंपनीज कर रही हैं. जो बड़ी कंपनीज हैं वो पेमेंट गेटवे को फोर्स करके उनको एनक्रिप्शन मोड में डेटा शेयर करती हैं, बिकॉज आवर इंडियन कंपनी नीड डेटा. वो डेटा मांगती हैं कंपनीज से, हमें चाहिए, वो फोर्स करती हैं, और कंपनी भी डायरेक्टली उनको प्लेन टेक्स्ट में डेटा दे देती हैं. अदर चीज फाइनेंशियल डेटा से बचने का सिंपल सॉल्यूशन है जो आरबीआई ने भी अभी निकाला है कि इंटरनेशनल ट्रांजैक्शन क्लोज करके हम अपने कार्ड के ऊपर मिनिमम ट्रांजैक्शन लिमिट डिफाइन कर सकते हैं. लाइक अगर कोई भी फ्रॉड हो देन आप अपने कार्ड पे 1000 रुपए का लिमिट लगा सकते हैं कि 1000 रुपए से ज्यादा, 1000 रुपए से ज्यादा का ट्रांजैक्शन ही ना हो कभी. अगर आपको वो ट्रांजैक्शन करना है देन ऑटोमेटिकली बैंक विल कॉल यू एंड दैट कैन बी इंक्रीज इजीली. बाकी डेटा ब्रीचेस होने के बाद में एंड यूजर कुछ भी नहीं कर सकता आई थिंक.
Right. Justice Shri Krishna, is there anything that you do to stay safe online?
I have saved myself from COVID. The best thing is to stay at home. Then you're not going to use all the apps. To wear a mask, you're there. I mean, it's not possible to do it all the time. So yes, there are some things like your two-factor prevention, two-factor authentication, and things like that. That they are working somewhat satisfactory. But Chandra, this is always a race between who want to protect the law and those who want to breach the law. Therefore, there is no guarantee that what is good today will be good tomorrow. Technology changes from second to second, and all the smartest people together today will not be able to withstand the smartness of the crooks tomorrow. Therefore, we have to protect ourselves as far as we can today. That's why he said, no, हाथ को कितने sanitize करो, मुंह mask वे करो. But still people are dying on the streets. Why? It's impossible to control the situation.
Chandra, yeah.
But
I have a point on 2FA. Recently, a data breach.
One second. Yeah, just
let
Sri
me
Krishna.
complete.
Yeah.
The last sentence that I wanted to say is, my tip to the individuals who are in is pressurize the government to bring a law soon, and the law that will take care of your interest. That is the only tip I have right now.
Yeah, Rajshekar?
Yeah, I have a serious concern also. Like last year एक data breach और हुआ था जिसमें एक कंपनी थी जो कि OTP सेंड करती थी यूजर्स को. So उस कंपनी के सर्वर में ही हैकर का लाइव एक्सेस था. So he was checking your live OTP. आपके पास क्या OTP जा रहा है? 2FA भी यहाँ पे फैल है. So I think कुछ companies now they are working in SMS का भी जो डेटा है वो भी encryption मोड में जाए तो बेटर है.
Right. Arvind,
So
I want to
again,
touch upon. Yeah, sorry. Come on, Arvind. Yeah.
I think Justice Sri Krishna summed it up correctly. This is, I mean, what worked maybe a year ago will not work today. This is a chore police game, right? I mean, you just hope that you are a little ahead, but most of the time you are not. You don't apply 2 patches or 1 patch, and somebody has found a leak. What Raj is saying, the security Raj is saying is true. I mean, you have 2-factor authentication. You feel secure that now you'll get an OTP, you'll put a password, then only things will happen. Somebody has already cracked that. So do disclose to me separately, Raj, which app is or which thing is that. We'll have to change something there.
Right. Just one more follow-up, Arvind. At the beginning of the show, you mentioned state-sponsored attacks. So again, how is India prepared for that? Justice Sri Krishna made a very valid point that data is now an orphan for the for MeitY, for CERT. That doesn't seem to be a priority. So how is India preparing for it?
Well, I hear, with due respect, I would have to disagree.
One second, may I say something? Today,
yes,
all over the world, ransomware is the one thing that is bothering every big company in America.
Yes,
because fortunately, we have not heard of it today. I mean, COVID also we heard very late in the day. By the time we hear it, all our companies will be ransomed totally. That is the biggest threat in US right now. All public utilities are being ransomed. Big financial companies are being ransomed.
Stop Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, half of this ransomware will go down. That's just an aside. There's a different discussion maybe, because now you have a currency that cannot be traced. That's a separate discussion, Chandra. What I said.
Arvind, is that the government's view? Because a lot of crypto,
no. This is aside.
Are hoping for some regulations.
This is an aside conversation. I have a different view on this. If this is a crypto, then crypto should be allowed, but with KYCs. The moment you do a KYC on a crypto, then you can at least know who you're paying to, if not today, tomorrow. But
you wanted to comment on the state-sponsored attack and the preparedness of India.
Let me explain that. I think there has undoubtedly been a lot of direct, indirect, rogue elements. India did take some steps by banning a lot of apps. Those could be classified as the indirect state sponsorship, where under the blanket of layered ownership, you did not know where the data is getting shared, what is being gamed, and what is being shared with what authority, wherever in the world. So India did take a lot of steps, but direct attacks have been very rampant, and direct attacks on our cyber systems have been very rampant. We've seen multiple reports by CERTs, by NIC, by others, that we've seen. And this is not only applicable to India. Singapore has seen it, Australia has seen it, US has seen it. So I think we have, while people, I saw some tweets today that India is at war or at protection at two fronts, on the eastern side, on the western side. I think the third front, which we are always on the protection at war, both defensively and offensively, is the cyber front. And as I say, we have to also recognize the cyber warriors like Raj and Saket and many others who are protecting these systems, and a lot of government systems, by the way, from friendly, not so friendly neighbors.
Right. There's a viewer question, Justice Shri Krishna, if you can take this. Recently, there was a breach in Domino's database. Can I invoke Section 43A of the IT Act?
You may, but then what relief will you get there? What relief will you get there?
So there are no, so there is no recourse then under IT Act or Consumer Protection.
Yes, I can tell you can even go and file a civil suit, and then you will get, your grandson will get the compensation if he succeeds. That is the problem. How many things can the court deal with? You add to it the data protection problems also. They really totally run aground.
Right. So hopefully we will have a personal data protection law soon to protect us. But until then, as Arvind said, Raj said, Saket said, we must, value our own data and protect it in every way possible. So I think on that note, we will wrap this edition of Moneycontrol Masterclass. Thank you very much, Justice Shri Krishna, Raj, Rajshekhar, Saket and Arvind, for all your perspective and insights. We hope our viewers found the insights useful, and we hope companies too will be more proactive when it comes to reporting these breaches. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stay
Thank you,
safe.
Chandra. Thanks to all the
Stay
Yeah,
safe.
take care and stay safe. Yeah.
Yes, all of
Stay
you
safe both
safe.
virally and cyberly.
Yes, that is it. I start by saying, thank God for that I'm healthy now. Thank God that I'm safe from cyber attack. And then I think of mask wearing and sanitizing my hands. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chandra.
Thanks.